What's going on, Raptors fans? Toronto Hoop Talk checking in today. I'm going to talk about the Raptors' 6-point Summer League win against the Utah Jazz. Now, this was a game like a lot of Summer League games, a lot of bad basketball, a hard game to pay attention to, but I tried my best so that I can give you guys the best content I can possibly give you. The players I want to give special attention to are Dowtin Jr. and DJ Wilson, so I'm going to save them for the end like in the last recap, and I'm going to kind of run through everybody else. Delanos had his worst game from the output perspective. I think he had 9 points. He took only like 8 shots. He spent a lot of time off the ball, way more time off the ball than he did in the first 2 games. I don't know if that was a strategy or if he kind of just like was vibing through the game and didn't take things too seriously. But yeah, spent a lot of time off the ball, didn't produce a whole ton of a lot. I don't really know what to make of that performance, but not a particularly eventful performance from Delanos. Christian Coloco didn't have a particularly good game. He had a block that looked nice. He changed shots at the rim. The thing with him, he's pretty predictable at this point. The things you know he's good at, he's good at. The things you know he's bad at, he's bad at. And honestly, I haven't seen a whole ton of a lot change in his games. In each game, there'll be variance in terms of like how much of the good stuff shows up versus how much of the bad stuff shows up. But it's fairly the same in terms of what is he good at, what is he not good at. So I don't have huge takeaways from this Christian Coloco game. If anything, it just shows how far away he is from hitting his ceiling. But I don't think a game like this changes how you look at his ceiling. David Johnson had a highlight moment. He dunked on somebody today, and he had a couple good drives in the game. He had some high energy moments. Still not that eventful of a game. Still nothing to write home about, really. A really young player, really raw. Definitely the G League is probably what's in his future for this upcoming season. But yeah, at least we got to see more from David Johnson. Harper Jr. had a similar game. Still a largely uneventful game, but he had some moments. He had a couple threes. He had some defensive moments. Another player that looks destined for the G League for this upcoming year, but at least you saw some improvement. You saw some more involvement in the game from Ron Harper Jr. Armani Brooks did have a bad game, you could say. But I still think you can take some good things out of his bad game, if that makes any sense. He shot 1 for 10 from 3. And yes, that's bad. But he took 10 threes, even though he wasn't doing well. And this is a summer league game, so I don't really care. I like to see the mentality of him hunting shots, him shooting confidently. His head didn't hang. His shoulders didn't slouch. He was aggressively looking for his shot. And I know he's a good three-point shooter. So I know that on other days, this would have not been as bad as it was today. But it was okay. On the other side of the court, it was similar from a mentality perspective. His hustle was all the way up defensively. Obviously, smaller player. It's not an impact player defensively, but he had a good game defensively, all things considered. He was hustling all over the place. He was aggressively hunting a shot offensively. It wasn't working for him, and yeah, it was a bad game. But you liked the effort that he played with. You liked the intensity. You liked the confidence. And look, I hope he has a bounce back game next game because he definitely didn't turn his shot not falling into like a bad game and a low effort game. On to the 2 players I want to focus on for this recap, DJ Wilson and Dowtin Jr. I'm going to start with DJ Wilson. He had his best game in a Raptors uniform this summer league so far. He shot 3 for 6 from 3, and that's his second game in a row shooting 50% from 3. Now, I understand that that's only 2 games, but watching the games, he's a better three-point shooter than I gave him credit for. I didn't even think this was something he was capable of. So yeah, I got to give him credit for that. Offensively, as a whole, his game was good. He had 22 points. His court vision was good. He was getting the ball around the court when the ball would come to him. Ball didn't stick to him like it does to other players. Defensively, there were ups and downs. The big takeaway for me was that in the second half, when we played him as a small ball 5, defensively things weren't good. He's not a presence in the paint. He's not somebody who changes shots. I pointed out in the preview of the last game how there was one moment that really stood out to me where he was basically the big. I don't know if he was the center on that possession, but he was the guy in the paint. And Armani Brooks got beat in the perimeter, and he just stepped to the side and vacated the rim for him to shoot. It was so weird. But yeah, he is not a center. That's what we learned today. In his good game, we learned he is not a center. He's a 4. And if he shoots the 3 like he shot today or even remotely closely, then yeah, he's very clearly a 4. And he's not somebody who's going to cramp the court from a spacing perspective. So as a whole, pretty solid game from DJ Wilson. Something hopefully he builds on. And when you watch his game today, you have a better understanding of why the Raptors want this guy in training camp and why he was one of the first guys to get a contract. Lastly, we're going to talk about Jeff Dowtin Jr., who had a steady game throughout the game. Like, he showed us a lot of the things he's already shown us. We know that he has good burst. We know that he has a quick first step. We know that he can get by guys in the perimeter. We know he's a comfortable dribbler. We know he can make some shots, and we know he can facilitate the offense as a point guard. And these are all things he did more of today. And so he reaffirmed a lot of the things we already know about him. But what really stood out about today was that he took over at the end. It feels like, I don't know offhand exactly, but for the last 2 to 4 possessions of the game, the ball was in his hands. The Jazz were down 15, I want to say, and they cut it down to 2 in the last minute or so. And who stepped up to the plate? Jeff Dowtin Jr. As a small guard with about 30 seconds to go, he got to the basket, got a bucket, extended the lead to 4, and he was our closer today. He's a guy that I didn't know who he was before Summer League, and I'm sure a lot of Raptors fans had no clue who this guy was, but today he played, and more importantly, he acted like he was the best player on this team in the biggest moments. When it was time to close the game out, it was Jeff Dowtin Jr. that showed up. And that was brilliant to see. He's playing like somebody who wants that training camp spot. He's playing like somebody who's going to come to training camp and look to take somebody's job. And that's great to see. Hopefully he builds on this for the next game. And hopefully we get to see him in training camp. So those are my observations for this game. If I missed anything, if there's anything you guys picked up on, make sure you throw it in the comments. I live tweeted the game today. I had a lot of fun with the timeline. It was a great time. Make sure you find me on Toronto Hoop Talk on Twitter. Make sure you like and share this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have another game coming up on Friday, and we're going to have the same drill. I'm going to be live tweeting the game, and then I'm going to come onto this channel afterwards and talk about my observations and what I saw. I'll catch you guys then. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and find me on all socials at Toronto Hoop Talk.